We kind of both got really busy and did not fill our vault even slightly.
Yes.
So we're going to have to fix that over the weekend.
I got really, really very busy. Definitely, my camera's definitely bumped. I got really very busy, and none of that was spent in a particular grinding out totems for a specific weapon. No, sir.
Absolutely.
Not at all.
Gosh, no way.
Yeah.
But Lower Kara.
Still don't have my daggers. Fuck's sake.
Lower Kara is going to be easier. But let's take
of course
a look.
it is. It's still so hard. I don't know what's wrong with like their tuning there, or if it's like, because I think okay, definitely a couple of those opera fights can profoundly off, but every other fight seems really fine to me. But then I'm not doing them at like 15 plus and 20 and stuff, so maybe there's a tuning wall you hit. But it's like theoretically actually doing those is really fun.
Yeah, I think that's so much of it. Like, we don't have any visibility into the true problems that the Mythic Plus community faces because we're not scaling. You know, when they're doing it, it's scaled to the tits, and there's just some bosses like, oh, is it tyrannical week? Well, fuck you then. Literally impossible.
Yeah.
Bring a specific class comp to try to break the maths. Good luck. Whereas for us, we're just like, we're happy. This isn't that hard. It's okay. We're fine.
We're sat there like, hey, we're doing this at a level of difficulty that the design is intended to work for. So it feels great and wonderful and fun. We're not bashing our heads against the nightmare scenario of numbers too big.
Yep, and everyone else is just fucking grinding their head off the wall of just the maximum. Yeah, the maximum scaling, because that is how the cookie crumbles with infinitely scaling difficulty. Yep. It will always get to the point of some sort of, basically, this is bullshit. John Madden tactics. They are required.
Yeah.
Which I suppose is in itself kind of cool. I guess that's why people find the Great Push to be, to be an interesting tournament. Yeah.
God, I have so many. I won't get into them. I have so many thoughts on how that works for game design. How it's inherently degenerate. Degenerate as far as games are concerned. Not actually degenerate.
Yeah, it's funky business.
Yeah.
So, Lower Karazhan, what have they done to it this time, boys?
Just delete it, okay? Delete it.
Opera events have proven to be more lethal than we'd like, particularly given the weekly rotation that makes them more challenging to master in Mythic Plus. So, the beautiful beast, Silver Forks, half health, bloody jab damage over time, 50% down, Soup Spray, 30% down, Heat Wave, 30% down, Westfall Story, the Poisonous Shank damage reduced by 50%, and I guess that's on top of the nerfs that have already happened.
Yeah, this is like this is like a repeat of what they had to do numerically for Sepulchre, which is just full on
Sepulchre.
Sorry,
2.
we're just taking massive amounts of damage off. And like, oh Jesus, that's brutal. But I suppose that's the blanket approach you have to take when you're working with skilling like this. I mean, it's like,
hey, it's called unbalancing the game.
Yeah,
week to week, which is what we actually want to see.
Yeah.
Westfall Story, that stuff's nerfed down. Wicket, the assistants are 25% less health, and their throw is 30% weaker, so that's interesting. Now, another thing, keen to see what your opinion is on this one, and that is that we've got more granular raid item level drops, right? So take a look at this. I'll just do normal mode. You can see that boss 1 is 398. Boss 2, 3, and 4 is 401. Then it's 405 for the next two, and the final two bosses are 408. Meaning that the raid itself is spanning 10 item levels. And so we go from 408 to then 411 with Heroic. And I suppose this is an increase in gear that'll significantly more match the actual difficulty curve of these bosses. Because the way it's been happening right now is it's all the same item level, bar the last 3 bosses, usually. So this is far more granular, and I suppose the pro of that is maybe some form of like smooth progression. You know, you push ideally, further, you get higher quality loot, that makes you happy, right? So that's like one side of this. I suppose there's obvious pitfalls, like classes will need to have an equal distribution of loot throughout these different item level brackets, so I suppose that will kind of hem in some of their itemization efforts a little bit in order to preserve balance.
Ideally.
But yeah, I guess interesting enough, I can see the utility of this in a non-Titan Forging world where I think Blizzard really, they just want the idea, you know, if you're farming the same 4 or 5 bosses, you are getting an item level upgrade if you progress, not just like a secondary stat upgrade. So I have a feeling for some players this will feel better. Yeah, it's a bit of a change. I believe this also does impact the Great Vault.
Yeah, that's the awkward part where this is really interesting, but in a world of where Mythic Plus exists, it certainly does raise a couple eyebrows. It depends on how hard they go for the difficulty curve increase that they talked about for Mythic Plus, where they wanted to feel a little bit harder comparatively in order to make sure it like matches with raid difficulty to a degree. Because this could be the case of, if this is kind of nerfing, if this is compared to Mythic Plus, if this is perceived as nerfing raids, because you've got like say 408 there from normal is what you're kind of getting from Mythic Plus of the normal F difficulty, whereas you're doing normal boss and it's like 401, you're like why would I ever bother raiding for gear when I could just do M plus for similar levels of gear? They have to do something pretty brutal for this to actually make sense in that comparison.
Yeah.
So that's the part of this I'm concerned about. But generally speaking, I think this is theoretically, assuming all the balance works out, which is a big enough ask, is excellent change. It does make raid bis substantially more complicated, but it's just more interesting. It's just it's more interesting, and it will incentivize pushing a little bit deeper into raid for a little bit better gear, which is like, yeah, I think that's just it feels like something that should have been there for the longest time, but I think they maybe like the cleanliness of a single raid item level for the long time. So I hope this goes as they plan, because I think that's pretty smart, and I know it will. I think it will have the impact of bumping the item levels per tier. I think, even by only a small amount. But I think we're at the point where with catch up appearing every single patch, I think we're beyond the point of like carrying us. We would have to unwind about 8 years of World of Warcraft to have gear from a previous tier actually matter. And even then, would you want it to? In how today's game is played? Likely not. So that's interesting. I hope it's hope it works. I'm sure interested to see how they make loot feel special. How much like will they increase the amount of loot available? Not the amount of loot that drops, but the amount of loot available per boss to kind of give you a broader range of. Hey, we're going to get 408. Say like Razgazeth. There's like that's going to drop. Razgazeth is going to drop more loot, so you don't feel like, say there's something from Aeronog that's really good, and that's 398. You're like, well, I can't replace that with a 408 in normal. I have to go to Heroic to replace that, because that's like one of the problems, especially with trinkets and stuff, is liable to be a problem. So hopefully they make that a bit. Hopefully they know all these problems going in, but I assume they do, because this is like their bread and butter of what they think about. They don't always succeed when it comes to loot, but they seem to know what they're talking about item level wise anyway, roughly.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting one. It'll feel a bit different, but I don't think it'll be catastrophic overall.
No.